This is Dr. Gadja, an economist, computer scientist, medical doctor, and global health PhD epidemiologist. I do this as a call-in to help Ghana chart a course for greatness and, in the process, help Africa along the way. There are many issues we'll be discussing on this platform, and we welcome your comments, rebukes, and questions. Today's topic. This is Dr. Gadja coming to you again, and this time I'm coming to you with something that is happening at the moment. And I have been looking at it with some level of surprise. We see very unfavorable winds blowing across the world. And it is not that only Africa is behaving in ways that, in my opinion, are unwise and surprising, but Europe and America and other places are also showing similar behavior, and which is surprising. And it made me wonder whether during these times with the economic giants showing such behaviors that, in my opinion, are unwise, will be the opportunity for Africa to spring out and find its place among those countries that are economically developed. The only problem with the African situation is that the same unwise behavior has continued much longer than has been witnessed among Europe, America, and in other places. Theirs is just being observed in the beginning of this century. However, the African unwise phenomenon has carried on for about half a century. And it has been the main reason for our economic plight. And my hope is that even as Europe and America begin to suffer or not recognize decisions that had made them famous and economic giants in the past, we can find a way to recognize some of these things and become economic powers in our own right. You see, population or labor is one of the most essential resources for every economic activity, especially in terms of production. We have the resource of production as labor, capital, raw materials, and at times they add entrepreneur. But the labor is population. It is also important in terms of aggregate demand. More people means more market, more aggregate demand. Numbers mean a lot in economics. In actual fact, China has built its success mainly on numbers. And as India is leapfrogging China to become the most populous country in the world, it has become the target of most economies, and especially the major ones such as the EU and America, because of numbers. So we in Africa for the longest time have not recognized the importance of numbers, and we keep shipping our people outside
We keep sending them outside. We panic when our numbers are growing, unable to transform the numbers into economic wealth for our people. But lately, Europe is beginning to show xenophobic tendencies, said that people are being, especially immigrants, are being treated badly. We just saw the rise of a person to leadership in Netherlands who claims to be an anti-Islamist. That means, like the Americans would say, Islamophobia. He is now the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. The other time I was watching the news and I saw a riot in Germany, which has been organized by anti-immigrant groups. So we see many of these things moving on the continent of Europe. We see these things, hatred or wanting foreigners to leave their country happening. Meanwhile, these same things have been what these countries had stood on to develop in the past. They used it for numbers, hence economic wealth. Yet the same countries are rejecting the same things that those who were before them had depended on. And it is indeed surprising, especially because you would expect that they know better. They have just forgotten the benefit of numbers. They just don't remember anymore. And my hope is that in this time that such winds are blowing, especially on the continent of Europe and America, countries like Ghana, Africa will recognize the importance and the benefit of numbers and will allow strangers, even African brothers and sisters, who want to come to their country to come. Because that is a potential economic growth and wealth for Ghana. Because for each of them that come, there is a mouth to feed. So for nothing at all, there will be more demand for food in the domestic economy. That will lead to two things. Either increases in prices, which will be recognized by suppliers as an indicator to produce more goods and services to meet the demand. That production of more goods and services leads to expansion of the economy. And wealth creation. Also, just from the get-go, suppliers realizing increasing in economy, increasing population, will just go and increase output. Knowing there's increase in economy will lead to increases in the demand for their products. We just go and increase production. Not wait for price as an indicator for more supply of the goods and services that are available in the country. That is putting more resources of the country to use. And that is how a country expands. So I am hoping that the xenophobic tendencies that we saw sometime on the continent, or that is on the continent because of tribal sentiments and all that will be thrown away so that we can focus on developing our country and Africa as a whole. There is so much we can do with more people. The other thing is that at times within more people you find more smart people too. And so some might have some witty ideas to become some product inventor, and that adds to the economy. So refusing to accept strangers should not be part of our it should not be our style, because accepting more people will mean more money. The only thing you have to do is to manage the people, because accepting more people without jobs and all that could lead to crime also. But you have to manage your economy and make sure that the population increases is channeled to future economic prosperity. The last time I was browsing the internet, I came across a video by this man. I've heard about him a long time ago, Kwesi Pratt. And he has been a strong fighter for social justice. That's how I'll call him, a social justice fighter for people, on the continent. And he was talking about sovereignty and questioning whether the African countries that think or claim sovereignty are actually sovereign. And I realized that you can question that in many ways. Then he went forward and spoke about borders and the fact that borders are colonial identities. I agree to that. And that somebody's bathroom is in one country and his living room in another country, and so on and so forth. But then he used borders to question the concept of sovereignty. And I was like, no, I don't agree with you on this point. Because sovereignty is the free will or ability to do whatever you want to do without any challenge. You are sovereign in that regard. So I said, no, borders don't. Now borders may play a role, which is borders define the limits of your sovereign authority in terms of a country. But the borders do not show whether you're sovereign or not. It just defines the limits of that sovereignty. But every nation is sovereign. Ghana is sovereign, so to say. Now we understand that there are certain challenges that other nations might want to impose on another country in terms of follow me, do this or don't do this or don't do that. But at least to the extent of sovereignty that our nations have, Ghana is considered to be a sovereign nation. So to a large extent, we can do anything we want to do. A leader within the continent, within the country limits of Ghana. And so Ghana is a sovereign nation. So at times, although the people of the continent or of Ghana, like Kwesi Pratt, has good intentions, they are unable to channel the energy appropriately. For instance, Ghana is talking about, or Africa is talking about reparation for slavery, and I have not seen any court case where anybody has sent a case to court asking for some reparation. That is what you have to do. You have to know how to channel the energy. Although I believe that reparations or not, Africa will do well or not do well based on the African. So the reparation will not determine how well Ghana will do. It's not going to determine anything. It will be money, but if it's brought into Ghana, we have to understand that money without commensurate supply of goods and services or more will lead to increase in prices. So with that money will come inflation. So we have to be careful. I mean, what we want, what we choose, what we ask for. We don't just go ask for just any money. Give me money, give me money, give me money. That is like the song African leaders sing. Give me money, give me money, give me money. You will think that they use a foreign currency with those countries like the euro and the dollar, as if Ghana uses euro and dollar. But Ghana doesn't use euro and dollar. Now I find it fascinating. Most of the time I hear, oh, we have to pay workers. So we need money. We have to pay flood victims. Like recently, I heard that being said to the president of France, Macron, was being told by President Akufo-Addo that we need money to pay for. I mean, he said we need, the situation is money. So he talked about it. But these flood victims, they have to compensate them or, re-establish their dwelling place. And they said they need money. And you ask, does Ghana use euros or what do you call the other currency? Or dollar? We don't. So it gets a little confusing. Do you need the money to go and buy CDs? Do you need $1 to go and pay for CDs from a printing press or something like that? What do you need the money for? You're a sovereign nation. You could provide your own money. And your money is not the foreign currency. So what do you use the foreign currency for? That is a thought. That's something that we should all be thinking about. We leave too much lapses in our system. Journalists, they don't ask for questions. It's like we don't know what it's all about. Like the gold for oil, they take one gold, go and buy oil. That is capital, right? You don't need to take another gold to buy the second oil. You take the money you make from selling the first oil to go and buy the second oil. But who is asking that question? Maybe each time they come around, take gold and go and get oil. Take gold and go and get oil. Where is the money going from the sale of the oil? Nobody asks any question. Nobody writes about anything. That is Africa for you. But I believe in these times when these powerful winds are running through powerful places like Europe and America, Africa will begin to think a little sharper than we did before. What is so fascinating is that Africa has a lot of its citizens in very powerful places in the West, helping the West to develop their economy or to get to further places. Even in the NASA and so on and so forth. Now they can't come and work in Africa because Africa has no ambitious program going like NASA. But there are very, very smart children of African descent that are doing very well and helping other countries. The sad thing though is when they come to the continent to want to help the continent do not accept or does not accept their help. And that is sad. Now, don't ask me to give you evidence of that because I have a lot to give. I have a lot of evidence of that to give. So this gentleman, Kwesi Pratt, was talking about the uselessness of the borders in Africa. And then the next day I listened to the news and they are having conferences across Africa to find out how to, like commissions on the demarcation of African borders. And I said, wow, look at this. Anyway, I didn't get too much because I said, okay, maybe that is a state within the like a state within the USA, say Pennsylvania, wanting to carefully and clearly define its borders with Delaware. Okay, so no problem. But we don't need those barriers of limit. Africa is one. We have to think about it that way. The West is telling us that. They are telling us we are the biggest continent in the world. We didn't tell us before. One thing too which is true, I believe, but it's not come out yet, is the biggest population in the world. Our power and our authority as a power will determine on if we are able to unite as one people, which we were prior to colonization. But we don't have to blame the colonies. That is past and gone. What we do today is up to us. What we do today is up to us. We don't have to look at anybody, because what they did not put us in a hole where we never escaped. We've been able to escape from the hole, and now the progress is before us. It is true that borders have to come down. I remember thinking about a formula to try to bring borders down, whereby you try to find all the leaders of the country and have an ID for those who want to come to Africa, and when they come in, they don't need visa for when they are using those IDs. And I introduce those IDs in all the countries of Africa. So when you have that ID, you pass without a visa. So if Ghana accepts, Togo accepts, Nigeria accepts, Benin accepts, so you can travel from Ghana to Nigeria without a visa because you hold that thing. But then the border itself is not down. I realize it will do some, but it's not going to do a lot. What we actually need is no borders. No borders at all on the continent. But for the purposes of ruling, for country guys, bring the country guys to the level of governor. They take taxes in the area they control. But borders, remove them. Even Europe did that. How much more us? How much more Africa? So, Mr. Kwesi Pratt was talking about something important. But I could see he's been doing this fight for social justice for a long time. But the problem I see Africa has is the ability to channel some of this energy correctly. Channeling it correctly is the problem Africa has, and for that matter Ghana. They have good intentions, but they don't know what to do to make the good intentions materialize. I was thinking about a story that I heard about United Arab Emirates acquiring land in Africa, size of which is bigger than the UK. And Africans got worried, got very panicky. That is too much, was the viewpoint. But what is he using it for? And I personally think that nobody should sell any land in Africa, because land cannot be possessed. You cannot carry it. So land should not be sold. It should not be a commodity that is supposed to be sold, but it should be a commodity that we use. So we just use it. You signal to government the purposes for which you want to use it. And if that purpose tallies with the government's purpose for which he wants to put the land, hey, you get access to use the land. It doesn't belong to you. You just use it. That is what I think should be in Africa. Because the way it is now is not the best. And very sadly, I find Ghana's policy of land to be very wrong. However, the whole of Africa is trying to say Ghana's is good, and they are coming to learn the way Ghana demarcates or handles land issues. Because that policy where by says land should return to families or families own land in Ghana, I think it's wrong-headed. It's wrong-headed in the sense that, private interest is profit, but government's interest is not profit. Government's interest is social, and it is environmental care, protection. Government is not looking for profit. Government is trying to protect lands for the community or for Ghana, making sure the ecological needs of the people are met. But if you give it to a private guy, like it is now, every land is owned by a family or something. When a family wants to sell it for maybe production of something that a pollutant in the area, nobody says anything. So we all get polluted in that area, whether particulate or whatever. We all get affected because the family is going to make money. They allow it. They take the money. Government doesn't say anything. Nobody says anything because it's their land. No, that is not what policy we should be following. We should be following a policy whereby when you want to do something with land, apart from residential property, everything else you want to do to land, government must know and make sure it conforms with its ecological policies and environmental policies of the place. Because think about it. If private people own all the reserves, the forests and all, and they destroy all of it, what do we then do as a people? And that is about to happen if we don't change that wrong-headed policy. It's wrong-headed. Somebody wants to take land, and so they make a policy to allow them to take land, and it's wrong-headed. It's wrong-headed. We have to ensure that the country is protected from these things and have a policy that is in conformance to the needs of the Ghanaian people and not to the need of maybe one or two individuals who had an agenda and so set up a policy. Most of these lands that were returned to families have been wasted, like the Shire Hills. Those hills were heritage hills. Today, they have been reduced to flat lands by about 20 or more companies from China that are digging up stones, making quarry from this thing and sending it back to China. You see? Because it's private land. Chinese got it from private people and went to government. I have this land, I want to mine on it. Government said, okay, it's your land. And that is it. We have to do better. Now, some of these issues I may not know the details of, but these are some, I can be totally wrong because it is what is going on. It is what is going on. And we have to be careful so that we don't lose everything we have as a nation to somebody else. That policy that all lands in Ghana are not for sale but are leasable, it's a good one. Now, I believe that it didn't come from us. Somebody from outside somewhere brought it in as a suggestion, probably the US, so that they don't take your lands. That lands in Ghana are not for sale. Yes, period. Lands in Ghana are not for sale, which means that you don't have to even pay for land anywhere in Ghana. You only have to use the land. You don't even say it is for lease. No. You use the land and maybe share profit or have a deal with the owner of the land, which usually I say is government, apart from residential land, residential places designated for residential properties, then individuals can own. But apart from residential properties, all other purposes must go through government. That is my view. I mean, you may agree with me, not agree with me. That is not my field, though. But this is something that I felt necessary to talk about, because I see that the gentleman, Kwesi Pratt, has a good heart for the country. However, how to channel his policies, he doesn't know, or that energy, he doesn't know. Usually, it is very difficult to see well when you belong in the same place. Had Nkrumah not traveled to the Europe and to America, he wouldn't have been able to come back with such great policies, which unfortunately he wasn't allowed to implement fully, although he had his own negatives too. Everybody has. He had his own limitations, let me put it that way. So I am looking forward for Africa to arise, or Ghana to arise from this current situations and become a beacon of hope for the whole of Africa. Now I believe Ghana has a particular position in Africa that enhances its opportunity to become a beacon of hope for the whole African continent. After all, it was the first independent country, apart from those that were not colonized, such as Liberia and Ethiopia. Liberia, it was they brought slaves back, and also I think Sierra Leone. South Africa, it was 1910 when they founded that place, and then Ethiopia. But the rest of them, Ghana was the first to gain independence. And I believe that if Ghana does their things correctly, forget about petty squabbles and tribal hatred and all these negative xenophobia practices or xenophobic practices, Ghana is targeted for greatness. And I want us to know that. Targeted for greatness. Especially even if we are not as wise as at times our action seems to look. We are still targeted for greatness. But it will be better if we are understanding the things that are going on and be able to put in place better policies. So far we are not. And I hope that while these winds are blowing in other places, we will be able to find reason to welcome strangers from the continent, from anywhere, and have the hope that we will use numbers to push our economy forward. Thank you, Gaja. I'll be back next time with something I want to talk to you about. I had just made a video not too long ago. A podcast not too long ago about import taxation and all that. And just this week, the Ghana government has presented some list of items that it wants to ban or reduce its importation to the country. And it's surprising that was exactly what I was speaking about, the negatives of it. So I'll come again and tell you more about that. Thank you.